Hiya, it's Hannah, the Artisan Duck. I thought I'd come back today with a polymer clay tutorial. This time I'm going to show how to use a cane, a pre-made cane, I won't be making that today, to make beads and pendants, because when I started making the jewellery with polymer clay, I learnt how to make some basic canes, but then I wasn't sure totally how to use them, so I thought this would be a good starting off point for anyone interested to find out. Right, so today I'm going to be using this pre-made rose cane, and I'm going to start off by making a bead. So all I've done is rolled out this fine mode professional clay. It's in the colour Bordeaux, and it's exactly the same colour clay that I've wrapped the rose cane in, so hopefully we can get a seamless blend onto the finish. If you use a lighter clay underneath and then you put that on top, if there's any gaps, you're going to see the lighter clay peeking through, so I just prefer to use the same colour. So as I've said, this is on a number 1, and in order to make sure I get a relatively consistent size bead, I always punch out my base bead with a circle cutter, and it just means that every time you do it you'll get a relatively even size of bead. Obviously, if you want a bigger bead, you could either punch out several and bunch them together, or use a bigger shape cutter. So that's my circle, and all I do is roll it, so squish it first, and then I'm going to roll it into a little ball, just like that. Just roll against the tile until it gets to be into the shape roughly of a ball. You can perfect this afterwards, but you really want a good ball shape. I guess roughly right. And now I'm going to get my cane, and that looks quite big in proportion to my bead, so I'm going to reduce it down a little bit further just to make it a bit smaller. And all I'm going to do that is just roll the end piece, and I'm not going to roll the whole lot, because if I go on to make other projects with it I might want some bigger pieces of cane to cut. So I just need it small enough to go around this bead. And I'm working on just a regular white tile today that I got from like a homeware shop, home maintenance type of shop. So I'm just going to cut the end off because it gets a little distorted, and I'm using my flexible blade to cut. I always do, I just prefer it. So I'm going to start slicing my cane and try to make the slices as thin as you can whilst getting all of the picture. It's not so worrisome for the pendant. It's not essential for the pendant, but for the beads you want a whole slice if possible. We'll do about 5 or 6, and I'm just rotating the cane each time I cut, just to try and make sure it stays in a relative like circular shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more. Right, and then we bring our bead back just like that, and I'm going to pick up one of the slices and just pop it on the bead like that. I always then do the other one on the opposite side, so it's like a hat on each end, like that. And it's never perfect, well, it isn't with me anyway. And I'm just going to go around and fill in the gaps, so I tend to sort of then just go around the middle, and I try to figure out at this point, am I going to get 3 or 4 round? Sometimes I get 4, sometimes I get 3. I'm not going to push them down too hard for a minute just to see. Let's have a look. I might get 4 on this one. There we go. If you wanted less crowding, you could go back again and make your cane smaller again, so you'd have smaller pieces to put on. So I'll just move that cane out the way, and then you can just see the bead's got all those little slices on it. From here we're just going to roll. I'm going to start off by doing it reasonably gently just to get the slices sort of adhered to the base bead, and then sort of increase the pressure a little bit because you want to smooth out the edges as much as possible so your bead looks like a proper finished bead. I shall keep going. I'll be back when it's done. Right, there we go. I've simply just carried on rolling it until the edge is smoothed out. This clay is relatively warm now because I've been using it for a little while. And there's my bead. Now I need to poke a hole in it, and I always go around at this point and just see if there's a point that I would rather start the hole at because there's something that's annoying me about it. So on this occasion there's quite a big spot of the burgundy there. So I'm going to put my hole, start it where that burgundy is. It just breaks it up a little bit, takes the eye away from the fact that it's just a big cluster. And all I do is put my little pokey tool in, hold it straight down and then push. And as soon as I feel it come through, you see it's just poking through, I take it back out and then I'm going to go back in from the opposite direction and push again. And this just means that both ends are neat as opposed to you having like a rough point sticking out on one side. The reason I love this tool is because it's actually tapered as well, so the more you push it sort of hits a wider point, so it really does force that shape to neaten. There we go. If you're worried that your bead has become a little distorted with putting pressure on it whilst you do the hole, you just go back and really gently this time, really gently, just roll it, bring it back into shape, and then you pop it on your tile, and once you've made a whole load, you can pop them in the oven and give them a good varnish. The end result, once they've been varnished and finished nicely, it looks like this. And all I've done is I've put some eye pins through and done loops and put them alternating with these gorgeous sort of burgundy Swarovski pearls that I found in a local craft shop, bead shop. So there we go. So that's the first one. And now it's actually really super simple, that it's not hard. And now I'll show you how I make a pendant. So for this one I've got the same base coloured clay, only this time I've rolled it out in a number 2. So I'll put that to one side for a second. I need to come in and again make my cane slices, and I thought we'd cut various shapes of pendants out, and I'll show you 2 different ways of cutting them out. So I'm going to grab my blade again, hoping you can see. It's difficult to know which angle to put the camera at so that you can see clearly what I'm doing. So I'm going to cut these cane slices just like I did before, rotating the cane each time, and I shall be back when I've cut enough. Right, there we go. I've got my little cane slices and my plain sheet of clay, and it's the same idea. You just pick up a cane slice, pop it on your sheet like that. I always start in one corner and work my way down, and just carry on until you filled the sheet. What I will say is that I tend not to get too fussy about making straight lines or worrying if it overlaps slightly. It kind of at this point adds to the finish on the pendant. If you look at the pendant I've already made, you can see there's some instances where it's overlapped another one, and I think it just makes it look more natural and a little bit less staged and forced. So I shall just carry on, and any little awkward gaps like this I just pop over like that and try and fill in as much as I can, because you don't want too big a gaps at the end. If you've got any cane slices that you didn't quite cut fully, like this one, if I can get it, this one was a bit of a mess, you can cut it in half and just use a little bit on one of the edges just to finish it off, just to get as much out of your little slice here as possible. So I'm just going to carry on filling that up, and I shall be back when I've done it, because I don't think anyone is going to find it that fun watching me do this. There we go, that's all done, and you can see it's all sort of raised up and bumpy with all the various little pieces of clay. So I'm going to pop that back down on my tile. It's not a towel, that's for sure. There we go. And I've got my acrylic roller here, And I've got to be honest and say, just make sure, I've got to start by saying, just make sure that your roller is clean, because I've done this before and put all my slices on, roll over and discover I've got like white clay stuck all over it or something, and you've smeared all over the front of your piece. So mine's all clean, so I'm just gently going to start rolling the clay, first this way, and then I rotate my tile and I go that way, and I keep rotating and rolling, and I do start to put a bit of pressure on it because we want these pieces to merge together to really adhere to the clay we've put it on, and for all the little gaps to fill in as much as possible. And by rotating it, if you've got one side that you're pushing harder on or anything like that, it just means you get a really much more even finish. Well, that's what I have found anyway. So I'm just going to keep on going all the way around. Sometimes I might go on a cheeky diagonal like that just to make sure that we're going in every direction. Especially helps if you've got any little gaps that need filling. It's just to try and push it in some slightly different directions. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. And the pieces are pretty much flat. I can still see the odd little gap there, but it is very small. So I might see if I can smooth those out a little bit more. But by and large, that's not bad. Right, once we're happy we've got our finished sheet like that, I'm just going to loosen it with my blade and just see how thin it's got by being rolled out. You can see it has got relatively thin. So I'm going to roll out, this started on a number 2, I'm going to roll out probably on a number 4 now, another sheet of clay, just the same burgundy. I'm going to use the scraps from what I've got left over, and I shall be back in a second. Right, there we go, there's my piece rolled out on a number 4. I'm going to pop that down, I'm going to pop this on top, and I'm just going to get my roller again. Just gently smooth out, make sure there's no air bubbles trapped between the 2 layers, just like that. And then we're ready to start cutting the pendants. Obviously you can just cut them with any old shape. So we could take this teardrop and you want to sort of position it so you get the best of your clay pattern. So you could do it like that. You simply press, lift up this if it's not too stuck, move that out of the way for a second, and then all we do is swipe a blade underneath to lift it, like that. And then you might want to just go around and neaten up any edges. I just like to run my finger. If you've got any spaces where you can just see there's like a little line there where it looks a little bit like the clay hasn't properly stuck, just get your finger and you can just run down and smooth out any little nicks in the cutting shape. You can just smooth out with your finger. Oops, there we go. I literally just use my finger and go around and just make sure that everything is smooth. And there's a pretty basic pendant shape which you could simply finish off by piercing a hole. So you just get your pokey tool and go straight down. So you like that, and just go straight down until you come out the other side, and then I do some like to go back in and just neaten up. So that's one basic pendant shape. Once you've put it in the oven and varnished it, you could simply attach a jump ring through. The other option is to get a lovely beveled edge. So in order to do that, you need a piece of plastic. So this is just like a sandwich bag, and I've cut a little piece off, and I tried to keep using just small pieces at a time because it tends to attract dust and then you've got it all over your clay. So put that on top and you just pop your cutter on again, decide where you want it to be. I think that looks quite nice. Just keep moving it around until you're totally happy. We'll go for there. And I like to use this quite sturdy acrylic block for this because it can hurt my hands otherwise. So you just press, and what you're doing is dragging that plastic down through the clay also. Lift that up. You can lift off your plastic and lift that up, and you've got a lovely, just see before, you can see the edges are lovely and rounded like that. I'm just going to take my blade again, go under, lift it, and at this point again just go around and check that the edges are as smooth as you would like them to be. This one's not too bad. There we go. Now for these types of pendants, you don't want to poke a hole straight through it. I think it looks a little bit awkward. So I have got some jump rings. So I'm just going to get one of these jump rings here. I've got a sharp craft knife, and I've got my flat nose pliers that I use for jewellery making. So I'm going to lift this up, and where you want the necklace sort of chain to hang, you're going to want to put your little jump ring in there. So I've got to make sure I don't slice my fingers, but also don't take it out of focus. So I'm going to cut into the clay, and you're going to slice across, and just be careful not to overshoot and into your finger. But if you can see, I've made an opening in the clay, and it doesn't really matter if it's a bit jagged or a bit wobbly, because you're going to seal it back up again in a minute. I put my blade to one side, I'm going to pick up my jump ring, and I'm going to grab it in my pliers. And I always like to do this with the opening at the bottom, so that the opening of that jump ring is what actually sits inside that heart. So you're never going to have that jump ring open up accidentally and fall off. Out from here, you just want to squeeze it shut. And I like to put it back on the tile like that. I hope you can see clearly. And I just tend to just go around with my fingers and just sort of push the shape back to how it should be, make sure it's all rounded, put a little bit of pressure on that opening there, and then lift it up, and then just double check, you know, am I happy with how that's sealed? Which that looks pretty good, I have to say. It's all neat again. And that jump ring, if you got your pliers, I mean, don't tug too hard, but if you're ever unsure, you could just put that in and just see, and it's pretty solid already. And obviously once it's been in the oven and hardened up, it shouldn't come out. So that's the pendant shape. So we've got that one, we've got the teardrop, and I also have already done another heart, but this time without the beveled edge. So you can see the difference that using that plastic has. This is a much blunter, sharper finish, and this is a much softer, rounder finish. And I will often do this rounded finish, but there are occasions you don't want that and you want something a bit blunter than that. Anyways, I shall link all the description of all the items below. There's a blog post written about this, plus I shall link, I think it's 2 other blog posts of some super simple polymer clay canes that you could get started with, and then you could use these techniques here to make your finished beads and pendants. Anyway, if you want to see more, you could click like and subscribe for me, please. Thank you very much. All right, till next time, bye.